live.
Fella, are we there? Are we back?
We're here.
FiveStack Live?
You're the first person. You're the first person on the list there.
Oh, look at that. Look at me. Dean Blundell. I'm right there.
Yeah.
Look at all these beautiful people coming in. Hi, everybody. Hi, America. Hi, Canada. Hi, 138 different countries where we have beautiful subscribers from, free or paid. Doesn't matter. Just want to point this out, though. That man right there is doing some of the best work on Substack right now. I just went through part 6 of The Greatest Heist. OMG. Narrative.org. Go check it out. I put it in my daily newsletter at deanblundell.substack.com as one of the most important stories you need to be following today. And you'll know why when you read it, because the Trump shit, it doesn't go back 3-4 years or 10 years when he came down that golden escalator. It goes back 30 years, and we're seeing the comeuppance of it, and it's going to kind of bleed into most of our conversations today. So please go and check it out. Hi, everybody. Hi, Courtney. Nice to see you. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Jenny with the Johnny with the G. Johnny with the G. Oh, yeah, there he is. This is a good day for a guy like Zev because he's been at this for the better part of a decade, and it's all the puzzle pieces are coming together for the FiveStack today for my friend.
It feels like a good day for a number of reasons. It's partly because of the Ghislaine story. That's an interesting story. I had very little sleep because I had only got it out at 4:00 this morning, so if I look a little weary, that's why. But it's also a great day because Dean Blundell is back on the FiveStack, and this is our first FiveStack after you've been away. We have not heard about your vacation, and I don't know if you want to share any of that, but...
Yeah, you know what? We can kind of lean into it. So I went to France. I'm very fortunate. I didn't take a vacation for like 7 years. So this year, I made a commitment to my family. I said we're going to go to Italy and we're going to go to France. So we did those things this summer, which is why I've had a couple of stops and starts with the FiveStack. So we went to Paris, and then we went to Bordeaux, which was beautiful, and then Biarritz. And it's amazing because there weren't many Canadians, but there were people from around the world that flood to south of France in the summertime. It's high season, as they say. And incredible trip. I cannot stand French food. They foam everything. There's a lot of raw stuff. They eat pigeon. Not for me. Soft. You can't choose. The textures are awful. That's French food. But the time of my life. And one of the greatest takeaways I have, and if you're listening to us or watching this and you're American or you're from France or you're from any country abroad, is when they found out I was Canadian, including some Americans. It was hilarious, the responses that I got from people. Dude, it was awesome. Even a cab driver in France, he's like, what is with the guy trying to take your country? And I'm like, I don't know. He goes, we hate him here. To a man, to a woman, to an individual, no matter where you are in Europe. Every European that I met, every American that I met that was traveling, every Canadian that I met, didn't matter where you were. When they found out you were from Canada, every single person was like, what's it like to live above crazy pants? And I'm like, we hate him here too.
Everyone
like
thinks he's crazy.
The hatred for him. And that's the other part. Yeah. They think he's got like, not just learning diseases. They think this guy is literally insane. And met a couple from Germany. This is an interesting story. The guy's name was Julian, and the lady's name was Natalia, I believe. And had a conversation with them, and of course they bring up Trump because I live in Canada and it's above the United States. And Julian did one of these. He's like, we are waving our hands. I know I sound Spanish. Waving our hands saying, we've been through this before. We know where it goes. So, it was eye-opening. It was incredible. And it was awesome to see, not just a different country where they do things differently, where they've got history, but people that have been through what America's going through right now, being able to weigh into it because of what happened in Europe from 1935 or 1935 really to 1945. It was 10 years, and that got me thinking. I was like, man, I'm going to get back. We're going to talk about the things in the Substack, and I'm going to have these conversations with these people in the back of my head all the time about warning flares from Europeans going, what is happening? We've lived this before. You know what I mean?
We certainly have, but here we go again. It seems every day the stories just pile up, and we see Donald Trump being more authoritarian by the day. And that's a lot of what our stories are about today as we begin the top 5 breaking news stories of the day. Oh, I'm a little rough today. So we begin with this great story. This is Trump's new Bureau of Labor Statistics. He's at least the nominee for that position, E.J. Antoni. He told Fox News that the agency should suspend monthly jobs reports that businesses and the Fed have relied on for over a century. Antoni claims the data lacks credibility due to large revisions, But former commissioners say there's zero evidence of manipulation, just the normal process of gathering data from smaller businesses that report later. The White House quickly backtracked, saying that, according to Press Secretary Leavitt, that they will hope to continue the reports as they've had. Americans can trust these reports. Now, it's funny because this is, of course, after the bad jobs reports last week where Trump fired the existing commissioner. And so here comes the new guy, and he will obviously cancel all future of these reports reports like this. I'm going to get there.
You're doing all right.
First day back.
Yeah, me too. Let me take you down memory lane for the past 6 months, okay? RFK Jr. What did he do? And what are his qualifications? And what is he saying prior to actually being nominated to be the guy that's in charge of healthcare in the United States of America? I won't do it. Boom, he goes in and he does everything he's not supposed to because he's a sycophant and an idiot. And he, like every other person in that Trump regime, they don't want anybody in the United States getting any bad news because it reflects absolutely poorly on them. So when they go and change things and they go and try to, gloss over the reality that America is currently going through under this Trump regime, which is death, destruction, financial destruction, healthcare destruction, the destruction of habeas corpus rights. Anybody that reports on any of that stuff, whether it be math, science, climate change, everybody, he has put every single denier, every single operative, every single conspiracy theorist, moron in charge of every single department that reports any sort of bipartisan, fact-based information to the people of America for one reason and one reason only. It is impossible to get mad when you don't know the truth.
Yeah.
It is impossible to get angry at the State of your Union, jobs reports, pandemics, COVID, GDP, the consumer index, interest rates. Like, it is impossible for you to be angry and to rise up and to generally strike or to go and conduct yourselves in a way where you can protest and you can push back against the American government if you don't know what the fuck is going on. And that is exactly why he put this dickhead in charge of BLS. And it is exactly why he got rid of the former commissioner. I can't remember the young lady's name, but she was terrific. She's a career public servant to the United States of America. And the purge is on, and it's ongoing. Whether you're a loyalist or not, doesn't matter to Donald Trump. What matters is, will you hide basic information that Americans need to be able to move forward in their lives on a daily basis with confidence to make changes in their lives so they can stay safe, so they can make money and they support their families? And the answer is no, because Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck about you.
It's not just, people in their homes making decisions based on these labor statistics. It's major $1 million, $1 trillion decisions that are being made day after day by big businesses around the world about how much they'll invest, whether the American economy is growing, whether it's declining, whether they should trust the numbers that come out of the Trump White House, whether they should trust American numbers at all, whether they should use the US dollar as the benchmark for global trade. And the more you take away these numbers and the legitimacy of these numbers, which of course no one's going to believe them now, no matter what they do. Even if they put out completely accurate numbers, no one's going to believe them because of this dude who's now in charge of the thing. America's credibility just washes away. The ability to invest in this country as a place where you can actually guarantee your investments, sort of guarantee your investments. You know that if the market's running the way it's expected, you may get, your return that you thought you would get when you invest in something. That is just taken away completely by these kinds of decisions. And what Donald Trump is doing is basically putting blinders on every single American. So they get no information, as you point out. I mean, it's just terrifying because the things that may be coming are terrifying. They're the worst horror movies you've ever imagined. And yet here we are watching the administration just cover up every single aspect where you can get the truth. Every single vehicle for the truth is being completely obscured. This is a very, very scary moment for America.
Yeah, working America too. I'm going to take you back again in time to 1935. Adolf Hitler takes over the country. He is named chancellor. The Kaiser at the time gets pushed out, and he went to work. And one of the first things that he did is he got rid of every single person that had any job when it came to informing the German people as to things like jobs, as to things like healthcare, as to things like the weather, fucking science, all the things that really mattered to the people of Germany back then. It still mattered to every single citizenry around the world. And the next thing he did was he started taking over police forces in cities. Stop me if this is sounding familiar. Stop me if this is sounding familiar. Yeah. And the German people for 10 years wandered in the wilderness, thought they were doing the right thing, thought they were supporting their country. Some of them, others knew what was going on, smart enough to get the fuck out. But they lived in ignorance, and that ignorance enabled Adolf Hitler to have support where he could have 1 million people show up to a rally with a bunch of red flags and then send it to everybody going, look how powerful I am, look how strong I am. Stop me if that sounds familiar too. Yeah. So, it's dictator playbook, it's fascist playbook. But more than that, it is the dumbing down of the United States of America and the people in it. And it's to keep people away from the extreme failure that Donald Trump and every single dictator and authoritarian goes through when they are able to harangue an entire country. And it's to keep people away from the truth, because the truth is what sets everybody free. We know that. If you have the truth, you're able to make changes in your life. If looking at, let's take the BLS jobs report. You look at the jobs report, you're going to look at the categories of jobs which are disappearing. And if you're making a career choice as a young man or young woman, or if you're looking at making a pivot as someone in your 30s or 40s, you're going to look at that jobs report and go, okay, these are my skill sets. Here's what I do. Here's what I don't do. That doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
That doesn't exist anymore. So you can't plan. Industries can't plan. It's truly exactly the same in every single environment, every single country where a dictator rises to power. This is just part of that playbook.
And what you point out about Hitler, of course, is he led them into the worst of the worst places you could possibly go. And the fear around America is that that's where we're going. I mean, it's not hard to imagine the possibility of this man who's now running the United States with the world's most advanced military in cahoots with Vladimir Putin, that they will do the world's most terrible things if they are allowed to continue to do them. And that is why this truth thing matters. That is why this BLS thing matters. It matters way more than people give it credit for, because it's not just a bunch of numbers. It's the truth, as you point out. This is the truth. And if you start
third-party truth, which is really important, right? Yeah.
And you start chipping away at that. You start doing what they're doing to the national media. They start, taking away critical voices. They start telling people what the news cycle is going to be like. And we'll talk about that later on. Well, when you do that, you start, you basically remove the most important aspect that people have in America. The thing that we have, the faith and trust that we have in America, is based on the fact that you think you're getting the truth from the government, from the media, from everybody, and that is being destroyed over the last 6 months, and it's getting worse and worse by the day.
Yeah. I had a brief conversation with someone today about an American friend of mine. And we were talking about yesterday's press conference, which we'll get into a little later on. And he said something pretty profound and interesting. He's like, this is hear no evil, see no evil. And if you hear evil or see evil, you will get fucking arrested and thrown in jail.
Yeah.
This is an attempt to destroy literally the American education system, right? Gutting the American education system. Linda McMahon's doing that. Gutting the healthcare system. Gutting Medicaid. Gutting surveillance on crypto, Russia. Gutting every department that has anything to do with child trafficking. Stopping reporting on all of that stuff. And it's not just to protect his friends and to give everybody in the administration a leg up so they're the high priests with the information, because that's how it used to work back in the day, right? And when I say back in the day, I mean thousands of years ago. The people of Egypt, this is a great example too. I'm a big history guy. The people of Egypt were slaves. That's what they were, slaves to the pharaoh. There wasn't really a class system, but the priests and certain politicians weren't really politicians back then. They had access to books. They had access to, science, some science. They had access to information that 95% of the Egyptian population did not have. And they called those people priests when they were really just people that could read. But they refused to share that information with those people because they had fucking pyramids to build, dude. They
Yeah.
had, they had empires to build. They had holes to dig and catacombs to dig and gold to make, and that's really what this is. If you look at it from a perspective of history, it's how do we keep people stupid? How do we keep as many people stupid? How do we roll back the clock to Stupidsville so that only a few of us have most of the information so we can continue to enrich ourselves and stay on top, which is make America great again. That's what he's talking about, and stay on top of all the migrants. How do we keep the white men and women who, have elite status in this country as the high priests of the United States of America or the oligarchs? So that just fits into part of that. But a little history lesson for people is that they really believe that they are the high priests of the United States and they are the new high priests and priestesses of the United States. And you are not entitled to what they know. You're just
So
not.
what happened to Egypt? What happened to that great empire?
Well, interesting you would ask. It fucking collapsed.
Yeah. That's what happens. It's what happens sometimes. Let's move on to the number 4 story, Putin-Trump Alaska Summit. So the Trump and Putin big summit is scheduled for Friday in Anchorage for the first summit since 2019. Ukraine's fate is on the table.
Wait.
What?
Donald Trump said he was going to Russia
What?
twice yesterday in the press conference. Yeah, he said he was said he was
That was the initial invitation.
in Russia.
Then probably someone tapped him on the shoulder and said, "You can't go to Russia, sir. You can't."
Did you hear
do that."
Caroline Levitt today? I was watching a little press clip. They're like, "Hey, Donald Trump said he was going to Russia. Do you know?" He goes, "Yeah, he might be going there one day, but it was a mental lapse, effectively." And which is the first time I've heard that, admitting that he had a mental lapse. But whatever.
I mean, he probably did think he was going to Russia. Maybe Alaska will be Russia by the end of Friday. Who knows?
What he's thinking.
Yeah, it could be. So this is the first time these guys have met since 2019. There's Ukraine's fate is obviously on the table. Zelensky is not going to be there, but now we've just heard before we got on the air today that there's going to be a bunch of calls with European leaders, then Zelensky and another call. Maybe they'll be involved in a sort of a pre-discussion or a post-discussion after Putin and Trump meet. The way Trump is positioning this is that he will feel out Putin's willingness for peace while floating potential land swaps that have Ukraine and Europe panicking about the territorial integrity of their land. Alaska is interesting also as a place to be because, of course, Alaska used to be owned by the Russians and they want it back. They've said so repeatedly. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow or Friday, but it certainly is back on the discussion block because for the first time in a long time, something's happening in Alaska. It's not exactly the center of the world global stage.
No, I've been there once. It's
not an exciting place.
No, it was in Ketchikan, Alaska once. It's not really exciting. So let's.
No offense to anyone who lives in Alaska.
No, it's a beautiful country.
Alaska.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
It's awesome. It's basically Canada.
Yeah, it's like a Yukon.
It's effectively ours. You just lease it. So, this is interesting because it depends on who you talk to and who you ask about the intention of this summit. I really kind of, the baseline of what Lev said to us yesterday in the weekend roundup and FiveStack that we combined, which everybody should go and watch over at.
It's a good show.
Yeah, Lev has it on his feed at Lev Parnas, deanblundell.substack.com. I believe you have it as well.
Yep.
What he said was really interesting. And, and I'll add to it a little bit. What he said was, listen, this is predetermined. They've already decided on what kind of conversations they're going to have. It's largely fucking performative. But what's interesting and what I loved about what Lev said, he's like, this is going to be an opportunity for Putin to do what Donald Trump loves the most, which is flatter the shit out of Donald Trump. Tell him he's doing a great job. Way to get control of your economy. You're the best leader in the world. Thank you for stepping in and helping with this. And you're really excited that we're going to get all the flattery, because that's what works with Trump, right? You saw that with Mark Carney when he sideswiped him, and he's like, "Wow, thanks for encouraging the free world to get better at their own security." And Trump's like, "Yeah, you're welcome." It's like, he didn't even recognize it. But anything that sounds like flattery, he'll take. And that's the book on Trump. I've talked to some people that are part of the Canada Council that are doing the trade negotiations. They're like, hey, listen, the only thing you can't do is tell Trump he's an idiot. The thing that we do is make sure he feels important and his regime that feels like he's important, because that is his currency. So there's that. And I think that that's largely going to be what we're going to see. And I had another conversation with someone today, a reporter who is from England, who lives in Ukraine, who reports on this, who will go nameless. And he said something really interesting to me too. He said, what we think is going on is they're cooking up this idea that they're going to try and welcome other people into the conversation, other countries into the conversation, and sweeten the pot for some of these countries. But what they don't understand, and this is what this gentleman from England who's in Ukraine said, is that the Ukrainian people, a recent poll said 84% of them said in no way will they cede any territory. And they want it all back, including Crimea, because they've gone 3 years getting their asses kicked. Last night, they had 124 bombs and missiles thrown into different parts of Ukraine. Russia just broke through. They've got North Koreans and Chinese troops that are helping them break through in the east. And it's a four-alarm blaze there. But the Ukrainian people are so sick and fucking tired of the not one, not two, not three, but 20 ceasefire um, ceasefire agreements that Russia has violated. 20 over the past 15 or 20 years. 20. And they're so angry at the rhetoric that they don't give a shit anymore. Like if Ukraine's not at the table, and this is what he said to me, Ukraine is not interested in anything that goes on in that meeting. As is Mark Carney is not interested in anything that's going on in that meeting. Because he knows it's a joke. Heard that today as well. And Keir Starmer and Macron and Merz out of Germany. They don't give a shit. Zelensky doesn't give a shit. This is such a performative gaslighting event. It's not a summit. It's Trump sane-washing Putin's terroristic genocide in Ukraine. It is Trump trying to warm the free world and Americans and Canadians up to the idea that he's probably going to have to drop sanctions and to put pressure on Zelensky and all of the EU partners, including Canada and others, that are supporting Ukraine and have committed to stay in Ukraine and with Ukraine until Russia is done, to put pressure on them and, in some cases, to possibly bribe them with opportunities. But to his credit, Zelensky's credit, the people of Ukraine, it ain't going to work. They're not interested. This isn't like, oh, God, just please let this stop in Ukraine. They've been living under this for 3.5 years. They get bombed, go into shelters, come out of their houses in the morning, whistle Dixie, go to the fucking supermarket. They grab some tea, they grab some biscuits, then they go to work, they feed their families, and they come back and they do it the same. This is all they know. It's their entire existence. So if you think that whatever happens has any bearing on what the Ukrainian people decide for the Ukrainian people, you're nuts.
I agree with you, but it's interesting because Lev's take that Putin's going to be flattering Trump is really interesting because there are two markets for this. I mean, the American markets needs to hear perhaps that Putin's flattering Trump, but for his own domestic market, which matters to him way more than the American market, he needs to come off as the strong man. He needs to be the guy who's telling Trump what to do. And as we saw in Helsinki the first time those two met, as leaders of countries, that's what he did. He humiliated him. He pulled him out there and humiliated him. And I feel like this is the same kind of thing because if you remember correctly, last Friday was the day they were going to institute the giant sanctions against Russia. Had the Ukraine ceasefire not begun. Of course, it never happened because you know what happened. But, instead of punishing Putin for not doing what was asked, he's rewarding Putin by bringing him to Alaska, by bringing him to the United States as a war criminal. He's, sane-washing this guy who is a war criminal and bringing him to America. The guy attacked America in 2016. So the whole thing is kind of humiliating for Trump regardless. The setup is humiliating for Trump. Now, what will it look like in terms of body language and in what Putin's going to do? I don't think Putin's going to miss a chance to look good in front of his people. And I don't think he cares about what Trump thinks at the end of the day. Trump's his puppet, and he knows that, and he wants the world to know that as well.
So interesting you say that because there's a whole bunch of propaganda that is being pumped into Russia from state-run media about little kids singing songs about the return of Alaska to Russia. On state-run television, Soilinov went off the other day about how when this whole thing happens, he hopes that, Putin goes and puts the Russian flag back in Alaskan soil because it's ours. We want it back. And there's a massive PR campaign in Russia right now aimed at the Russian people. Yeah, but it's been like hyperdrive. And it's being delivered to the Russian people through RT and different Sputnik and different bullshit, fake news organizations that claim to represent the news. They're really just propaganda outlets, all state run. That this summit is about Putin marching into America to demand that Russia gets Alaska back from the United States of America, number one. And he's going to tell Trump what's what when he gets there so that they can relieve sanctions and get back to the business of making Russia an empire again.
Mhm.
So those are the two most important messages that are being delivered to the Russian people about this summit. And they're both pure bullshit, to your point.
Yeah, it's so good. You mentioned that. I didn't know that stuff, but I raised it yesterday because that's when I first saw Alaska. It's only one reason Putin's going to Alaska. The reason he'd go to Anchorage is not exactly a fun place, as we pointed out. Is just to declare it his. It's to declare it as Russia territory, which it was Russian territory. It's $7.2 million. It's all they had to pay to get it way back when. Can you believe it? Buying a whole of a state for $7.2 million.
I know,
but
they needed the money, though.
Yeah, they did need the money. Is it 7.2 million or billion? I hope it's million.
I think it's million.
Yeah. So, this is not going to be good today for Trump. And no matter what he thinks he might be going out there and sussing a deal. Maybe the deal is, hey, leave Ukraine and I'll give you Alaska. That's a ridiculous deal. Maybe the deal is, hey, I'll give you Alaska. You let us take you Greenland. Maybe the deal is, hey, take Alaska. We'll take Canada. I don't know what the deal is, but it's certainly potentially potentially something that they'll just talk about, because he keeps talking about land swaps will be under discussion, but he doesn't necessarily say where those land swaps are going to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. He was asked about Ukraine. He's like, yeah, we're going to land swap. We're going to have a conversation about switching. We're going to do a little bit of that stuff. But he didn't really say it had anything to do with Ukraine. I think the Alaska thing's a stretch, but let me posit you this, my friend. I wouldn't be surprised. If there is some kind of public comment or play about Canada. I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, yeah.
And I also wouldn't be surprised if there's another public comment or play about Greenland. Wouldn't be surprised. So I want everybody to keep that front burner when this whole thing happens this weekend. I could be wrong, but I've had a few little birds tell me that we're going to start seeing some PR rhetoric about this empire building bullshit that Trump was on with the 51st state and Greenland, and he's largely cooled on all that crap. But I think we're going to see the reiteration of it, because it does a couple things, right? It changes the news cycle yet again and gets people further away from the Epstein files, further away from the DC takeover, further away from the police state, further away from ICE raids, further away from all the fascist takeover that we're seeing in the United States. But what it also does is it angers the rest of the world. And if I know one thing about Donald Trump, he loves being at the top of the news cycle, so it'll do that. And if I know one thing about Vladimir Putin, he loves to troll democracy. He loves to troll.
The reason why
countries.
That's not complete nonsense is because of the Arctic Council. I mean, when you look at the countries that surround the Arctic, which have the most say over what happens to the Arctic, which is the most important trade route in the world. Alaska is America's toehold on that Alaska and then Arctic Council. So without Alaska, America has no real place at the table.
No,
that means they've got to get something else to get a place at the table. They've said they want Greenland, and they've said they want Canada. Those are the two places that are available. The two seats that might be available are those two seats. So if Putin gets Alaska and Trump is able to say, well, then you allow us to attack Greenland, which is, would require sort of Russian help to achieve. Or they say, hey, we've got Canada surrounded now because we're on the border of Canada, both of our countries on the border of Canada. Let's start exerting pressure on Canada or start chipping away at Canada's Arctic foothold. Then you can see something else developing. So, these countries care about the Arctic more than anything else. He cares about the Arctic more than anything else because he's invested so much in building out Russia's northern Arctic ports and infrastructure because he knows how important it's going to be to the future of the world. So he wants it, to be equally as interesting to the Canadian side and the American side. This is not a coincidence that it's happening in Alaska. There's lots of other places they could have met. Mm-hmm. They chose the worst place in the world to go to, Anchorage. It's not exactly.
Well, I'd put Buffalo in that category as well.
I don't know. Buffalo's pretty nice. This Buffalo.
Okay. Never mind. Maybe Mississippi. But Listen, you bring up something, and I don't know if you missed it this week. I put out a post about it on my Substack. Over the weekend, Mark Carney appeared at CFB Trenton, Canada's biggest Air Force base, and made a couple of really stunning announcements. And one of the questions that came out of that announcement, the announcement was, we're putting fucking shovels in the ground. We're going to pay our people more. Our procurement is done. We're going to build here, and we're going to build an army to face the growing threats at home and abroad. Read between the fate to fight the new world order is what he said. So you read between those lines. He's preparing for something. And the other question that he was asked, which I found very interesting, was about the F-35 contract that we have with Lockheed Martin in the United States of America to buy about 24 F-35s, which we're scrapping, by the way. Just good news, everybody. The review is already done. They're just playing it out to get through the tariff bullshit and kind of playing the long game, because the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals is probably going to gas all these tariff bullshit things anyway, so whatever. But what he was asked was, what are you going to do about the F-35s? And he goes, listen, stuff's changed effectively. And what's changed is the emergency about our sovereignty. And he cited the Arctic. He's like, the biggest concern I have now is the Arctic. Some of the planes that we previously tried to procure, they're not going to be able to handle that kind of weather. We need different runways for that kind of plane. We need, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, we need equipment that's going to work in the areas we need it to work in the fastest, which is, if you again read between the lines, Sweden's Gripen, which is a cold weather fighter jet, 5th-gen jet that outpaces, everything to do with the F-35. The F-35 is a piece of shit. It's a recipe piece of shit. It's got all kinds of problems. Never works, never has. It's all piecemeal. And for some stupid reason, Canada was like, yeah, let's buy some of those. Well, yeah, I know why. I mean, everybody knows why.
You got a gun to your head, you buy it,
Yeah, exactly. So it was very interesting, because what he effectively said backs up what you're saying. And it leans into, which will be very interesting, the question of what's going to be talked about. And I wouldn't be surprised, because of that, that announcement, what Mark Carney knows that we don't, which we're sort of talking about right now, which is, what are they going to carve up, not just in Ukraine, but around the world?
Yeah.
And is Canada on the menu too?
Yeah, and it actually helps, for Trump to have Russia own Alaska, to be the enemy against Canada, is very convenient for Donald Trump. If he has that front opened up to Russia, not that it's not that far anyhow, but, if they can start using that as a military build-up place, then Canada looks, under the gun, becomes a real target by two big armies. So, that's exactly why it may happen that Alaska is given to Russia. That's good reason for that, because it'll takes the heat off him a little bit. But of course, it shouldn't happen, because they need a spot at the Arctic Council, and everyone should be ready to defend, America's position of Alaska as being part of the Arctic Council. Absolutely, they should be defending that all along.
Listen, if he gives Putin Alaska and then decides to invade Greenland, they're on the Arctic Council. They just switch their seat. Right?
Yeah, and there is something with Greenland that makes Russia, I can't remember what it was. Last time I heard Putin talk about his sort of northern strategy, he spoke about how Greenland has been a protectorate of Russia as well. And I'll find that quote. There's an interesting history there behind Greenland and Russia, which is at least a history that they've been spinning, which gives them some sort of territorial say over Greenland, according to Putin at least. Whatever. The number 3 story. Media searches for Epstein have plummeted by 90% in just 3 weeks, with the story vanishing from the front pages despite explosive new revelations, including my own at narrative.org. Now, we've exposed that there was a handover between Robert Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein valued at about $3 billion, and that it was a coordinated strategy that began in the 1980s, 10 years earlier than we were originally told Jeffrey Epstein met Ghislaine Maxwell. So, not that we're saying that should be the front page news everywhere, but it's certainly interesting how the coverage just dropped. And I'm fascinated by whether the mainstream media has directives on what to cover now. It's not, the drop has been so precipitative that it's like, what happened here? How did this happen so quickly? That the minute they announced the summit, the minute they had this, one news story about Ghislaine saying that she saw no wrongdoing by Donald Trump, that story died. It's no longer being covered in great in great amounts on American media. At least that's my perception. I don't know if it's everyone's perception, but it does feel to me like there is something deeper going on to make sure the story just disappears.
A couple things is I'd love to see that 3-week trend where you lost 90% of the gas behind the story, and look at it day by day, because I would say in the past 4 or 5 days things have really turned. I bet you the
Yeah,
majority of that drop in coverage has been in the past 4 or 5 days.
I
So
agree.
so there's that. Um, and that speaks to the takeover in DC, his crazy Putin comments the other day, him talking about medians and gassing himself out on the podium. Um, a- and and I think the other thing that I find really interesting about the lack of coverage when it comes to this is we're like goldfish, and the media knows that. There's two other things. We're like goldfish, the media knows that. And when people get tired of clicks, they look to something else for more clicks, right?
Mm,
And this DC story, way more clicks. It's just, you take over a fucking city, you federalize a city, you
yeah,
turn it into a police state. It's a big deal. Fascism is in town, right? So of course it's a big deal. The other thing that is interesting is in you would know this working in American media, and I have friends in American media, is there are hundreds of communications between the Trump regime
mm,
and mainstream media outlets on a daily basis, maybe thousands. It's not just about threats either. It's about, if you don't do this or if you cover this, we're going to do that. You're not going to get access to this. We're not going to approve a merger. All those things. This doesn't just happen like once with a legal letter. This isn't like a chilling effect because of what happened with Skydance and CBS. This is an ongoing effort. What people don't understand about the Trump regime is the most important thing to them, going back to them deciding not to give anybody information and shutting down BLS and putting a fucking sycophant in charge of HHS, all that stuff, is, again, the less you know about Donald Trump, the happier Donald Trump is, the happier the people from Project 2025 are. But the more he can distract you, and they can distract you about what they're doing, also the happier they are, right? The perception of success is the most important thing to Donald Trump. He has never been successful on his own. He's stolen, he's laundered, he has sold people out, he's a fucking rat.
he's a mobster,
He's a fucking mobster.
Yeah, that's what he is. That's how
And
he
the most
operates.
important thing to him his entire life has been the perception of his success, not his actual success. And so it's an everyday effort.
Mm,
It's an emergency every single day to threaten every single mainstream media outlet to change the fucking channel. And for
yeah,
like 3 weeks he couldn't.
yeah.
Now he can.
Yeah, and they did a very sophisticated operation, which everyone now sees as an operation, and maybe people just think that there's nowhere else to go on the story. But that's not true. There is a lot of places to go. Like, all my reporting is actually publicly available information. This is not stuff that it's interviews that I previously aired of many years ago, 6 years ago in some cases. I've not got some brand new dump of information. I've just got, my historical tapes, and I've got publicly available information, and I'm weaving a story together. There is a lot of places to go on this story without getting the FBI files. You can pretty much see what they've done. I mean, you have to squint a little bit to see it all, but it's
Yeah.
there. And, for us to just give up because, hey, we're not going to get to see the FBI files is ludicrous. There is a
Yeah.
ton in those FBI files, which is why they're not releasing them. And we can also figure it out ourselves. I mean, it's not going to be so difficult to piece together how this man came from nowhere to being a billionaire within a year or two on arrival in the United States. Like, that does not happen to most people. And it certainly did not happen to him for any good reason. It happened to him because he was given the money
Yeah.
by Robert Maxwell. Now, that is a significant thing because Robert Maxwell worked for the KGB. Worked for the Russians, the very man who's coming to America to declare victory on Friday to take Alaska. Well, he's the same organization, the same KGB that gave us Vladimir Putin, gave us Robert Maxwell. And so you can't divorce the two. And you certainly got to look at Robert Maxwell's history and see how this 40-year operation began with a directive to him to infect the American capitalist system with Soviet money. And by so doing, they were going to manipulate the capitalist system, detonate it, and destroy it. And here we are, 40 years later, witnessing the end result of this thing, or what might be the end result of this thing. And people need to really look at this. It's not that far history to go back to and look. You can, widen the lens and take a deeper look at what's going on. It's pretty clear this is what happened.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I'm amazed that nobody wants context and history.
Mm.
You just want headlines.
Yeah.
Context and history means you have to read and you got to piece things together. Like I read this story yesterday about Michael Rockefeller, who went missing in Papua New Guinea because he apparently got eaten by a tribe. And I'm like, this is fucking fascinating. I didn't know any of this stuff. Yeah. I just knew that the youngest Rockefeller went missing after his boat capsized in like 1961.
Yeah,
I love stories like that, right? I read about the Rockefellers and all the rich elite history back in the day. At once the richest family in the United States of America, and I'm reading this and I'm like, wow, context. Nobody wants context anymore. Everybody just wants headlines, and they're too busy. But you have to have that context, which is why your story and that broader lens are so important. Which is why at the top I'm like, everybody, you got to go read this story because it opens up your entire universe into what's happening now. And if you want new news about Ghislaine Maxwell, and this is good news, it was announced today that Republican Senator Congressman, and Mo Khanna have gotten together and invited dozens of Epstein and Maxwell's victims to the House on September the 13th to parade them in front of Congress and to get their testimony, to have conversations with them, and to do one thing and one thing only, which is give people context and history as to who, what, where, when, and why, which is going to be fucking incredible, giving victims voices, specifically the ones who publicly want that voice.
Yeah, and it would be so important that they do that. And, they don't have to do it within the House as well. The Democrats can do stuff outside of the House. They can have press conferences. They can have, they can do what the Republicans did way back when the Democrats were in charge. They can have their own hearings outside in a hotel room or anywhere else where they.
Do you remember that debate where Trump brought Bill Clinton's alleged sexual assault victims to the debate?
Right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, same thing.
Brilliant. Do it.
Yeah, do it. Because this is the thing we have, right now. It's not that it's the only thing we have, but this thing has the potential to really open the eyes of MAGA, of the base, of everybody, that this man is corrupt and everything he's been saying to the American people has been a lie, has been a giant lie, that he is the deep state, that he is, in fact, the mobsters and the New York elite that have stolen America's future. It's in fact what he is. So the more we can emphasize that, the more we can share that, and with as much facts and grounding as we can, the better off this attempt to weaken Donald Trump will be. Because I guarantee you, once he drops below 25%, or if he gets to 25%, he can't continue. He can't continue.
No, it's coming. And what is he, 32? 33?
Yeah, it's pretty low. Yeah.
32, 33% approval. And yesterday he's like, I got the best numbers I've ever had in my life. I'm the best. Again, if you don't look into that, you're going to fucking believe him. And nobody is fact checking him. Everybody's like, well, they're not great, but I get what you're saying. And maybe with Republicans, your stuff's high. And I couldn't agree more, which is, and we're talking about something that nobody's talking about. Sabrina Wood, who's one of our listeners, she's like, this is maddening. Of course it's maddening because this might be the first time you're hearing about it. And I'm always amazed that people are just hearing about this stuff, whether it be the greatest heist, whether it be, the Maxwell victims being paraded, whether it be, why this is happening in Alaska, whether it be, election reform and martial law coming to town, because it is coming to town. And they're like, oh, I didn't think of that because I don't get that information. My God, my friends, our community, you beautiful people, you're part of the resistance. That little box in the bottom with the arrow, share it right now. Hit those hearts. Subscribe, free or paid, doesn't matter, but just share. Because if you didn't know this stuff, and if you're just getting affirmed today, imagine 377 million other people in your country who are being harangued by the lack of information. And I said this yesterday, there's so many of us right now that go, I think I'm going crazy. Like I had a conversation with a woman who's part of this healthcare advocacy thing called the Ghost Gurney. And it was amazing. She's been an advocate her whole life. She says, "This is the first time in my life I felt insane." Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, don't be. Here's why. And we talked about Canadian unity, and she left the conversation, so much happier because she's like, oh my God, I didn't look at it like that. You've got, an entire country of Canada that came back and voted for the right guy to push back against fascism, disinformation, hatred, mean-spiritedness, all the other shit that America missed an opportunity to do. And again, it's because she didn't have that information. So she subscribed to my Substack, and I just saw her. She's watching now live.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Someone was asking on the chat what I mean by he can't continue. The example I go to is Nixon. Nixon, when he got to 25%, was done. There was just nothing he could do. And that's when, his Republican senators marched up to him and said, you got to go. And this is where we'll land up. I think at some point, if Trump goes below a certain number, which projects into the 2026 elections as a complete blue wave that really screws up Trump, then he might be persuaded to have to leave because that's what they'll need to do. I mean, what it sets up is, of course, another disaster in Vance and whatever. But, at the end of the day, that 25% is an important threshold. At least it was when Nixon's time. I suspect it still is today, that you certainly need to be in those 20 plus figures to maintain a credible presidency.
Yeah, because everybody in your party is going to look at losing their job. It was the same thing with the same thing with the Liberal Party of Canada before Justin Trudeau stepped aside. Because he had a bunch of politicians step aside going, hey, if he's going to lead, we're done.
Yeah.
And the second they turfed Justin Trudeau, his own party, and because he had a 26% approval rating around the country. To your point, the second they turfed him, overnight, Canada's fortunes changed. Every single one of those politicians decided to come out of retirement, rerun, because they're like, I'll get to keep my job. Yes, there's an inherent selfishness in all that. Absolutely. And the most selfish political party in North America is the GOP. They're literally riding a rapist, felon, convict, a sexual predator, past all their values, past their virtues, past their commitment to doing the right thing for the right reasons, because they want to keep their $300,000 a year job in black cars and fucking condo allowances. Like, literally, that's all this is.
It's a big part of it. And that's, in fact, why the president has initiated the D.C. takeover of the police in D.C. 850 federal officers and National Guard troops deployed.
Is this story
across,
2? Is this story
yes,
2?
this is story number 2, and maybe number 1. We might combine them.
All right.
National Guard troops deployed across Washington, D.C. overnight as Trump executed his unprecedented takeover of D.C. policing, despite violent crimes hitting at 30-year lows. Multiple federal agencies, including Secret Service, FBI, and Homeland Security, now patrol alongside confused local cops who don't know their chain of command. Civil rights groups warn this is designed to suppress dissent and intimidate protesters, with activists carrying Free DC, No Police State signs already facing heavy surveillance. I mean, this is, obviously an attempt to stop the dissent and any protests happening in DC as he's watching those numbers collapse.
Yeah. Did you see the video of the National Guard starting to walk down? There's 2 videos that I saw today that really told me a funny story. One was a video of about 15, 20 National Guard guys, no masks on, by the way, and no guns. They're not allowed to carry guns, not allowed to wear masks. They have to be easily identified. Muriel Bowser said that yesterday. She also said, hey, we didn't know this was happening, but we're going to do our best to make sure that, the people of Washington are taken care of. So that video was interesting. But it was interesting not because they weren't wearing masks. It was interesting because they had all their shoulders were down here and they had their heads down and they're scuffling and it's like fucking 37 degrees and it's like so hot. They're like, what are we fucking doing? There's another video, 3 videos of a couple of National Guard guys sitting outside of a Humvee, opening the door, closing the door, opening the door, closing the door. And one guy standing next to the door, literally looking into the sky like, I cannot believe I had to leave my home this morning for this bullshit. Like, it's crazy. But the third video that I want to bring everybody's attention to your point, you talk about confusion. There was a fender bender, like, I don't know, a mile away from the White House. And it was like an innocent fender bender. And within like 30, someone had their cameras out. Within 30 seconds, fuck it. The FBI were there. Secret Service were there.
Everyone shows up.
National Guard were there. Fucking insurance companies were there. Metro Police were there. And they're all standing around looking at each other go, who's got jurisdiction over this fender bender? Do you have
Right.
jurisdiction?
None of them have jurisdiction. Oh, that's so Trump. That's so Trumpian. It's perfect. It's interesting to me. One of the biggest things that's happening, of course, is the removal of homeless people in DC, and the number of developments on that. He's calling it the beautification project of DC, but really, what they're doing is a show of force against the homeless people. And there's a number of stories that came out that were just fascinating to me. On the one hand, and I'm just going to find this for you here, they are going to be issuing fines and potential prison sentences to people who don't evacuate the positions that they have in these camps that exist all across DC and frankly all across every major city in America. So that's what Carolyn Levitt said today. Fines and prison sentences. But then there's this other thing where they've got these, I guess they call them camps that are designated for rehabilitation of mentally unstable people in cheap land outside of the cities, where they will be putting, homeless people to.
Oh, it's a homeless person concentration camp.
It's a homeless person concentration camp with basic facilities and tents, that they can live in, and then also have rehabilitation there. So, because they're mentally unstable or something, I don't know what the justification around that is. This is about the most frightening thing I've ever seen. This is a
add it to the list.
Yeah, well, yes, it is another one of those things. But if this is really what they're planning to do, if this is they're going to pick up all these homeless people and put them in camps where they aren't allowed to leave, really, for not having a home in America?
Yes. He doesn't care. There are a couple things Donald Trump doesn't want to see when his motorcade leaves the White House on the way to Andrews Air Force Base. Okay, couple things he doesn't want to see. One of them
wants to see homeless camps. Hey, we're all in agreement. We'd like to see the homeless camps go.
Sure,
but you should give them housing, not send them to a camp.
But hold it. Let me. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
But add war veterans who have been maimed or injured to that list. Arlington Cemetery several years ago he looks at John Kelly. He's like, can you get these handicapped people away from me? It's gross. It's gross. Remember that? And it's the same thing. Like if you watch the press conference yesterday, and if you watched it closely, you watch him become animated. He called the city disgusting. These people are disgusting. The city's disgusting. This graffiti and these medians with the metal and the lobbyists, and literally was incoherent at that point. But this is all about optics for Donald Trump, which again, you go back to perception. The only thing that matters to him, the perception of power, perception of beauty, perception of excellence, which is why he's got, a whole bunch of Wayfair gold-plated things up in the White House now in his office. It's like perception. So, and he got really mad because he was like, it's embarrassing. I'm fucking embarrassed by this city. I got to go meet with Putin in Russia.
Yeah.
I saw that yesterday, which is not Russia, it's Alaska, as we kind of bring it all back around.
Yeah.
And this place is gross. It's disgusting. This is the fucking nation's capital.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Again, concentrating on all the wrong things. Not the people.
Yeah.
Not the migrants. Not the poor fucking homeless people who all are suffering from trauma, which if you know anything about homelessness, if you know anything about addiction, those people are not mentally unstable. They have suffered enormous trauma, which is why they use, which is why they don't want authority in their life, which is why they sleep on grates, because they don't know how to live because they've been fucked over by a parent, by a family, by themselves, by life, all the things
by
that
the
create
society
trauma.
and by property developers who, by the way, are responsible for the increased pricing of housing, which makes it impossible for people to live in most areas.
And so do you know what he does?
Yeah.
Instead of having a program to help them, to rehabilitate them, he threatens them. Finding a homeless person. I mean, good luck, right? We're going to fine you, person that doesn't have a fucking bank account who eats out of a garbage can. You're going to pay that fine. No one's paying that fine. We're going to throw you in jail. We're going to take you to a concentration camp. They sleep on fucking grates.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit in the middle of winter. Go ahead and send them. But my point is the inhumanity is the point. It's not a bug. It's a feature of what he's trying to do, which is trying to threaten people from staying away from his purview so he doesn't have to get in his motorcade and go to AFB and see something that makes him sick. This is disgusting. That is your president, ladies and gentlemen.
And here's a study in contrast, because Mark Carney's housing policy is exactly the opposite. Mark Carney's housing policy is all about spending billions of dollars on, investing particularly in prefab homes, in prefabricated
Tiny
homes.
homes, prefab
Yeah,
homes, yeah.
and creating incentives for people to create communities with those prefabricated homes so they solve the housing crisis. It's a really smart idea. He's pouring billions of dollars into it.
Mhm.
And it's a kind of solution that will solve the problem in Canada. So instead of sending people to camps, Mark Carney is building communities of prefabricated homes where these people could find new lives.
Mhm.
Where in America, they're sending them to concentration camps. And, there is the difference between these two countries. And what used to be America, frankly, the Carney policy is the kind of policy you used to get in America. Now we're getting, the Trump version of America, which is this: only the rich survive, only the rich matter, everyone else is scum, and everyone else needs to be disappeared, which is exactly what he's doing with a vast number of the population.
Well said, my friend. Well said.
Well, that's the FiveStack today. DeanBlundell.substack.com is one of the most important reads, I will say, on Substack every day, because no one tells it like you tell it. There's a dose of truth in everything you're saying, and your reporting is top notch. You get all the top stories every day. Everyone should subscribe to the Dean Blundell Substack at deanblundell.substack.com.
Thank you.
And narrative.org. I'm going to be continuing The Greatest Heist, where we're going to be, part 6 is out today. And it was a hell of a work to try to pull all those pieces together. But part 7 is really interesting because part 7 takes us into Donald Trump. And whether Donald Trump was was he a mark for Jeffrey Epstein, or was he a partner of Jeffrey Epstein? And that's sort of where we get into the next chapter of The Greatest Heist.
Partner.
I think Mark originally. I'm going to spoil this. We're going to have to wait to see.
All right. Don't spoil it. That's just my guess. And real quick before I go,
Yeah.
We the support that we've received, you and I have received just for this podcast has been incredible. We love it when you can chat. We love it when you comment. People like Courtney, Kat, who's in here. I love you, Kat. Kat from Texas. She's a mental health professional. I believe she might be even a lawyer. I mean, we got some educated people here.
Yeah.
And it's not possible unless you become a subscriber. And we want you to share this with as many people as possible. So what I did was discounted my, you're going to hate me. I discounted my annual memberships to the end of the month as we finish out the summer, 50% off for everybody, new, old. If you're a free sub, great. You can upgrade yours so you can be part of this, get unlimited content, be part of these conversations, and get exclusive content. And really want to welcome you into the community.
So what does a year-long membership now go for?
$60.
$60. That's pretty good. It's a good price.
Yeah, well, it's what I do.
It's what you do.
It's what I do.
Giver. You're a giver.
It's not about, it absolutely. I mean, this has been such an incredible experience. It truly helps us stay on top of these conversations and information so you can be affirmed. But more importantly, I just am grateful. I'm grateful for everybody, whether you're free or paid. And I wanted to give back and I wanted to say thank you. And so we're going to do that till the end of the month, August 31st. So head to deanblundell.substack.com. If you appreciate what we do, please become a subscriber. Please share this with someone you love. You can even gift a subscription to somebody. Specifically, if you've got a MAGA family member that doesn't believe any of this shit, gift them a subscription.
It's great. It's a great thing.
And they'll just get a fire hose of this information.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's perfect. It's a perfect gift. It's the perfect gift to give anyone who doesn't have a grasp on the truth. By the way, because you're being so nice to everybody, I'll also be nice to everybody by saying that for the next 24 hours, I'm going to lift the paywall on The Greatest Heist. So if anyone, because right now
you got to run and read it. And read it.
It's a good one. It's a good one, and everyone should read it. It's a little gripping. It's an interesting saga. So I hope everyone reads it. That is the FiveStack. We'll be back tomorrow at 3:00. We'll see you then.